Welcome to STMU SET Spotlight, where we explore the stories and people shaping the future of science, technology, and education. I'm your host, Dr. Paul Uhlig, Chair and Professor of Mathematics. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome two students from our biology department to share about their journey at St. Mary's and beyond as they embark in their next steps pursuing graduate school. Please welcome Chiara Maldonado and Victoria Sanchez. Welcome, and please tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi, my name is Chiara Maldonado. I am a forensic science student here at St. Mary's University. I concentrate in biology, and I have minors in biomedical research and bioinformatics. And some research that I do on campus is with Dr. Har. It's on microplastics and C. elegans.
Hi, I'm Victoria. So I'm a biochemistry major, and I do research at UT Health San Antonio.
Welcome to both of you. So when you first started college, what did you think your path would be?
So I thought I was going to go into become an MD, so different type of doctor. Obviously that's not where I'm at now, and that's mostly from pushing from my professors, where they would essentially ask me and then say, "I think you're going to be a PhD," and I said, "That's crazy," but obviously it wasn't because that's where I'm at now. But yeah, that's essentially how I got here, is a lot of pushing from professors and then finding out that I really enjoyed research.
Wonderful. Chiara?
Yeah, for me, I originally came in, as I have mentioned, a forensic science, a biology major. And one of the things was I also wanted to go to medical school because I wanted to pursue becoming a forensic medical examiner. And then I started to think more about the pathway medical school, and I ended up reaching out to my advisors and asking about something that I've heard in class, promoting a lot about research and saying that it's very beneficial in whichever pathway. And I got really interested, and I asked my advisor, and she was actually looking for students. So I applied for an SRF program, that's Spring Research Fellowship, and that's when you get paired with a research professor, and that's how I started off. And I actually really enjoyed research, and that opened the realm of a PhD, and that's currently where I'm at right now.
So Victoria, how did you get started in research?
So what happened is I was in general biology 2 with Dr. Galaladine, and he told me to go to his office, which I thought I was getting in trouble, but I wasn't. And he was like, there's a research program that's still available. Do you want to do it? And at first I said no, because I was planning to do shadowing for medical school that summer, and then also some volunteer opportunities. But he said that this was a very new program, and so there would still be a lot of opportunity to go into it, because since the program was kind of last minute in getting implemented, it was later on in the application cycle than other programs. So it was around March-ish, and most of the time summer programs are closed by that time. So I was still able to apply, and I did get into it. And so for that program, it was at UT Health, where I'm still with that lab today. And so that was a 3-summer-long program, but I also did research with them during the year too.
Those sound like wonderful starts to the journey. What mentorship or research programs have helped guide you along the path you're on?
So there's that one, which it's called Stir Up. And so, like I said, it's 3 summers long. There's supposed to be a home mentor involved at our home institution, so St. Mary's in my case, but I actually didn't really get paired with someone because most of the research I do at UT Health is in vivo, so it's in a mouse model, and St. Mary's doesn't really have that here. And so what they allowed me to do is to still stick with them during the year, and then later I joined URISE, which provided the funding for me to do that, because it was mostly voluntary before that, the research I was doing, but it let me get compensated. And so I was able to come in more and just adjust my schedule more. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Chiara?
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest things that have impacted my research journey is my mentorship from Dr. Jennifer Har. She's my advisor for forensic science, but she's actually my primary investigator for my lab here at St. Mary's. She is the main reason why I even applied to SRF. I did hear about it, but I didn't think I was qualified. But that's actually what the program is for. The Spring Research Fellowship is a first start to research. So it's very beginner friendly. And that's one of the things where not only was her mentorship very involved in my path, but also that program with St. Mary's has really impacted my journey as well. And that actually led later on to my application to URISE, which I'm also with Victoria and other two students. And so that's one of the biggest things that have pushed my journey into research.
So let's talk strategy. You both talked about the application to these programs, but how did you approach your applications to your graduate programs?
Admittedly, I was a bit sloppy, mostly because it kind of since I joined my lab, we've both kind of had the idea that I would stay with them. So there was always kind of this expectation that I would go to UT Health San Antonio for grad school and that they would help me get into that. So I feel like because of that, I was a little less focused than I should have been. So for instance, I would have probably applied to more schools than I did if I had not had that prior relationship. But I still received a lot of support both from my lab over there and then my professors over here. So it wasn't all bad, but it probably wasn't as good as I should have been about it.
Did you still apply to other programs?
I applied to 6 other programs, but URISE, before it lost the funding, the requirement was like 10 to 12-ish. So I probably should have kept with that, but I didn't end up doing that because additionally I had a little family thing going on during that. So I wasn't able to apply to all of the schools I was going to because I was going to apply to 2 more. So I did do less, but it worked out for me, which is very lucky, but yeah.
Yeah, as for me, this was a realm that I did not know how to approach. I didn't even know what I wanted to specialize in. I knew I really liked microplastics, and I work with C. elegans, which is a worm, and that was one of the things that I really enjoyed. But I actually did a summer program over summer 2025, which was with acute myeloid leukemia, which is a blood cancer, and that was something that I really enjoyed as well. And so I was kind of stuck between just regular cell biology or physiology, toxicology. That's kind of what me and my lab here at St. Mary's kind of specializes in versus cancer research, which I've never had experience in other than that past summer. And so I was mainly looking into umbrella programs where I could cover different areas of research so that I could really narrow down what I'd like to do since I love research in general. I don't mind what topic it is. So yeah, that was one of my things where when approaching these applications, I wanted to select something where I could dabble in a little bit of everything.
How many programs did you apply to?
For me, we also were told to apply to 14 due to timing and personal situations that were going on. I applied to 10. So yeah, I ended up getting a chunk done, a good chunk.
That's still a good chunk for both of you. So how did you narrow down your list and what factors mattered most in that process?
So I applied, I believe, to almost exclusively umbrella programs, except for one, because I really like the subject, which was metabolic biology. And I narrowed it down specifically pretty much by location, and then also because, at least for the Texas schools, since I'm at UT Health, I know a little bit about the research there, and I have a little bit of connections just through my graduate student mentor. So from that, I could kind of determine, do I like the type of research there? Like, is it cancer biology? Because I'm cancer biology in the research I do. If it was heavy on that, that's essentially the area I want to go in. But there were some umbrella programs, for instance, that didn't have a cancer biology discipline. So I thought that's probably not for me. But it was mostly by location because I cannot stand cold weather. So I knew that wasn't going to be good. So I just pretty much avoided the north entirely.
Good factor to consider.
Yeah, as for me, for narrowing down programs and what mattered most, it was mainly cost of living. I applied to whichever umbrella programs that were around, but I knew that I wanted to stay in Texas. But after talking to other advisors and mentors, they actually said to apply to some outside since I would be very competitive. And when applying, I tried to apply to schools that were more I guess, equal for the stipend versus the cost of living because I wanted to be able to have savings just in case anything were to happen or emergencies. And so that was just my thought process. And so I didn't mind what weather. I was open to whichever. I've never been outside of Texas for longer than a couple of months. And so I was really open to exploring something new. But that was one of the biggest factors that I really cared about the most was the stipend. And I also cared about the disciplines. So I tried to steer more towards cancer biology rather than something that was maybe more like neuroscience based. But mainly all of the umbrella programs covered pretty much everything. And it was just based on which schools I was interested in based on the faculty research.
The application process for PhD programs can sometimes feel overwhelming. So what are some of the things you did to stay motivated through those times?
So very honestly, I procrastinated a lot. And I just enjoyed the research I currently do. So I was always like, I'll do it a little bit later, which isn't good. Admittedly, it isn't good. But I did have like a week or so where I was only working on the applications. It was close to the deadline, but I was still able to get everything done. So I would say it's not ideal, but if that's kind of like how you work, it's good to just have like a really big chunk and then just get it done then, because then you can kind of solely focus on that. And at least for me, I didn't find myself that stressed while doing the application or prior to that being like, I need to get everything done. Oh my gosh. And part of that was because of Dr. Contreras and our weekly class that we do, because we were always getting checked up on. And so there was a little bit of concern for me, I think, because of that. But it all turned out well. So it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, for me, it was very overwhelming because I had to apply to, I was planning to apply to 10 programs. Outside of the applications, I also have responsibilities such as research, but also 2 other jobs. So it was kind of hard to juggle everything that was going on outside of research. So that was one of the biggest things that I had to implement that into my schedule. And so one of the biggest approaches for me and like to keep me motivated is just do the small chunk. You get to do your homework, you get to rest. And I think another thing that kept me motivated was the classes as well. Hearing my peers complete their sections in any of their applications kind of motivated me as well in also trying to complete mine, where it's like it's a little competition at that point where it's like we want to see each other succeed, and that's one of the things that it's like I could do this as well.
You both mentioned these umbrella programs. Would you mind explaining what an umbrella program is and why students might choose one?
Sure. So with PhD programs, most of the time they'll be for a specific subject. So like cancer biology or immunology or neuroscience. But an umbrella program essentially combines all of those into one application, and then you then have the freedom to choose later on. So while it does kind of restrict you to what's under that umbrella, you still have some movement that can happen. So you don't need to decide right away. But at the same time, that means that you're probably going to be competing with more students for that application.
Does the first year curriculum in those programs then look the same for all of those students?
Yeah, so it's mostly the same stuff. And then you have to do rotations to find a lab. And at that point, normally that's where you choose whatever discipline you're going to go into. And then from there, that's where the different classes start coming in. But for the most part, the first year is pretty consistent between disciplines, just because you probably aren't going to choose until like towards the end of that first year.
Can I get you to say a little bit about the interview process and what you did to prepare that worked particularly well and what it was like.
So for me, I talked with my graduate student mentor, because he is essentially 4 years ahead of me. So he's still relatively young, I guess, and close to me. So we're very casual with each other. And so we were going over the questions he had when he applied to some of the same schools, and then also just in general, because he's very familiar with some of the faculty. So he was like, I know for a fact that if this faculty were to interview you, they would ask these questions. And so we would go over that, and then also just review over the research that I have done, because as an undergraduate student, you don't necessarily have to understand the research you do to like a very high degree. But if you're interviewing for a PhD program, you do, like, it's important. And so we were going over any gaps that I might have had. And so that's mostly my preparation.
Yeah, as for me, one of the biggest things was Googling some common graduate interview questions, but also one of the things that I also did was schedule appointments with my advisor as mock interviews. I also utilized the Career Center here. I did many mock interviews before with some of the faculty and staff here, and that those are the things that helped me clear up some of my answers and my questions, and really think on the fly and how I could shape it in a way where it could always gear back to my research and why I want to go back to this, do this program in general. And so that really helped me a lot. I ended up, I guess, stumbling sometimes during those mock interviews. And after having that reflection of that, it's like, okay, this is how I could formulate my answer better. And that was one of the biggest things that helped me, especially since it's someone that you're familiar with or someone that's completely brand new, kind of like that experience that you have through these graduate interviews.
Did either of you leverage AI to prepare for your interview process with simulated interviews or?
A little bit, not really. So most of what I did was just for doing some kind of background, looking at the PIs that were going to be interviewing with me, because when you look up their profiles, there's so much that's on there, and it might not all be relevant because it might be from like 20 years ago. So they're more inclined to be asking stuff that's related to their current research. And then also it's just kind of easier to go that route because you tend to get the list of interviewers very close to the actual interview date. So you might not necessarily have time. Like for one of mine, I got it the night before. So there was not a lot of time to be doing like background for them. And so I used it mostly for that. And then also to come up with questions to ask the interviewers, because you do have to ask them some questions. It's not just a one-way thing. And if you don't necessarily look like the best candidate for that program. And so I kind of asked it to give me some questions about like what to ask them. And then, yeah, that's mostly what I did for using AI. But for the most part, I didn't use it that much.
Yeah, for me, I mainly just used it to brainstorm some questions because as much as Google really helps, sometimes they don't get as niche as other programs do. And it kind of helped with more programs that ask questions about their specific program. So one of the things could be like, what are the best things that you like about this program? And so using that, I wouldn't have gotten that if I just Googled it on my own. So it's kind of something that could generate a useful question and something that may be outside of the box that people might not have remembered and posted online. So that's one of the things that I used AI for. But as for anything else, I'm not really, just the questions part because it was a brand new field to me and I didn't know what to expect.
So name something that surprised you in this process, and then what advice would you give future applicants?
I guess with interviews, I was just surprised at how many master's students there were, which I think it's worse this year because of funding. But for example, at one of the interviews I did, I was the only undergraduate there and everyone else was masters. So it felt a little overwhelming at that point. And then when there were undergrads at the other interviews, they were like, I'm in an Ivy League school. And you're like, okay, well, that's obvious. We're obviously not the same here. So that was different from what I was expecting. But you just kind of have to roll with it. Like, if you think about it too much, it's just going to mess you up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Going into my interviews, I was really anxious. I didn't know what to expect. I was expecting to see more undergraduates at the interview, but yeah, it was mainly also like higher, past undergraduate level, and that was one of the things that kind of gotten me shooken up. But for the most part, it was, I guess, surprising how some people that interview ask their questions differently. So sometimes it could be a conversation, sometimes it could be like an interrogation. And I think it's really just how flexible you are when answering answering their questions. But yeah, it was one of the biggest surprises was that there's a lot of other people with more experience and that were far older than me. And I just felt really like young and small in my research field, but I felt confident in what I knew. And that's one of the biggest things that kind of helped me stay in my zone where it's like, you know what you're going to say, you know your research. And that's the only thing that really could help you whenever you feel inferior to others. So, yeah.
So St. Mary's has a long history of sending its graduates to PhD, MD programs, and others, and with lots of success. So coming from a small school like St. Mary's with a holistic education, how out of place did you feel competing with students that were coming from larger institutions or these Ivy League schools that you mentioned?
So personally, I think part of the reason I didn't feel too out of place is because I do research at UT Health. So the type of research is different. Like I said, we're able to do like in vivo mouse models over there, which we can't do here because it's a whole process to even get that approved. So I feel like because of that, and then also just how long I've stuck with my lab, that means that they trained me to do like more advanced things that they wouldn't necessarily trust someone that's only there for one summer to do. So I didn't necessarily feel too out of place, but I mean, when you compare it to like a master's student, they're more likely to have a first author publication, which looks great for them. And as an undergraduate, it's insane to expect that. Like, no reasonable program should expect you to have a first author publication. You might have a publication, but it's really up in the air because that's just not how research works to be able to expect you to have a publication at any given amount of time. So I just found that they're more likely to have those, which is unfortunate, but you can't really do anything about that. So it's just best to not focus on it and just focus on what you can change, which, I mean, is just seeking opportunities. But that's pretty much it.
Chiara?
Yeah. If I'm being really honest, I'm not really ashamed or anything. I actually think the holistic education from St. Mary's is actually way more beneficial than just being pure science. And so I give props to the schools that have trained their students and given all of the access and funding to research. But one of the things at St. Mary's that I really like is that not only am I also open to science, I'm also open to other sciences like social sciences or just the approach that St. Mary's does has made me a better scientist. I know more about ethics than probably an Ivy League student. I mean, I'm not owning up to that, but that's one of the things where it's here they care about character, and that might be something that the graduate programs are looking for or may not. It's just up in the air whenever it comes to these interviews. And I think if you utilize that, you coming from this small institution and still taking initiative to join research, I think that still makes you very competitive. And I think that's something that we should be proud of. And even getting an interview is something that is accomplishment on its own. So, yeah.
As a closing thought, what would you say to a student, a future student going through the process who's unsure if they belong in research or grad school?
I say just start as soon as you can, because realistically, when you start research, they're not going to put you on like the most important or complicated project in the lab. They're going to give you essentially busy work. Like you might just be doing dishwashing or something because that's what they trust you to do. As you build more trust, you'll then advance and learn more techniques. So it's really not as intimidating, I think, as people might think initially. And then also, even if you are just doing something like washing, like I say dishwashing, it's not actual dishes, but essentially that's what it is. But you do get to witness current graduate students, and they will actually give you really good advice. And especially in the biomedical sciences, some of them have applied to like medical school too. And so they have insights in that if you decide that's like, you don't want to do a PhD, you want to do an MD, they still can help you with that. So I think it's just really valuable to get that research experience just as soon as possible, regardless if you think that's really what you're going to pursue, because it can help with other stuff as well.
Yeah, for me, I would say that it never hurts to start. It's something that maybe for a majority of people may not be, but it's something that's very valuable in discovering future discoveries and all over Earth and just in general. I think it's one of the biggest things of why we have so much in the medical field and why we have so much just in general creations and technologies. And if you want to be a part of that, research is a great way to jump in. And yes, it's scary at first and you might be hesitant, but at the end of the day, if you find the right people and the right guiders, you will be successful in whichever field you end up in, whether it's graduate school, medical school. Everyone has their own path. And if you think research is the way to go, then go ahead and get started and just seek out help. Seeking out help is like the easiest way to get to where you want to be. So yeah.
Chiara, Victoria, thank you very much. On behalf of SCT Spotlight, thank you to our guests, Chiara Maldonado and Victoria Sanchez. We invite everyone to join us again for the next episode as we continue highlighting the people advancing science, engineering, and technology at St. Mary's University. Until then, elevate your excellence, shape excellent tomorrows.